like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos and updates. This week, I'm delighted to be joined again by a very good friend, Kieran Shanahan. He's come on today for a chat to talk about Newcastle's new owners in detail, his hopes for the upcoming transfer window, whether or not Newcastle can avoid relegation this season. I was just going to have a chat as well about the clash between our two clubs last week, Liverpool and Newcastle. So, loads to discuss. Kieran, thanks a million for coming back on the show. You're part of the furniture at this stage of the channel, and you've gone down really well so far. So, thanks again for coming on.
Not about it. Thanks very much for having me.
Like a boomerang, keep coming back, so
you can't get rid of a bad thing.
Very good. So look, we're just going to do the usual cheers with a Christmas twist this year.
Yeah, Christmas mugs, kind of.
So, happy Christmas to you, Kieran.
You too.
All the hell for 2022. And hopefully we'll be sitting here this time next year and Newcastle will still be in the Premiership.
Yeah. To hell or the Championship.
Yeah. So look, I suppose we touched on it briefly in the last episode there when we were talking about your trip over to James's Park. But the new owners have been in the club now a couple of months. What has been your first impression of them so far?
So I think, with a bit more time now to have seen stuff, right? They have been very cleverly, I would say, and well advised. They have been very, very, very aware of what will and won't go down well. Okay, so things that the previous ownership didn't care about, like what fans thought, essentially, right? Easy wins, like little PR victories. The new ownership have been very, very astute and very, very aware, of things that would go down well, that wouldn't cost them the earth. I give an example. I remember they were there a couple of weeks and the windows on the outside of the Gallagher end were being cleaned for the first time in about 20 years. And there was people like delirious that such a development would be happening. Like there would be very standard practice at any other club.
Little things really, isn't it?
That's right, because Newcastle was so badly ran for so long. They've been very cute about stuff like, no, listen, it would have had to be done anyway. It's just that in between their time they owned the club, since they took over the club in October, they've done things that they couldn't affect the team until January, but they've done a lot of other things that have kept the fans engaged, little small things like that, and little community engagements. They've been very good they've matched any donations to the local food bank, things like that. That stuff makes a massive difference. When you've been starved of anything for so long, there'd be good things to do anyway. Every club should do it. But they are the kind of things that go down very well with, I suppose, traditionally well-supported clubs like Newcastle, where the supporters actually winning the league isn't necessarily the priority. Right now it isn't. And like little things like them mean an awful lot to the local people that live there. When I was over there, I noticed that the food bank was a massive thing. And like the club have been very in community has been a big thing with them. They've been very engaged with the people of the city. And that is a huge, huge win for them. An easy win, but something the previous ownership never bothered with. So that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing I would say is, in the beginning time, which is to be a little bit expected, they weren't expecting to get control of the club as suddenly as, and actions since then have been evidence to that. Like I think if they'd taken over the club, if they'd been given the keys to the club last June, I think Rafael Benitez would be the manager now, for instance.
Yeah.
Definitely he would, without a shadow of a doubt. Okay. They would have signed players, obviously, in the summer. You know what I mean? We wouldn't be where we are now, probably in the table. With that said, we have Eddie Howe, and it's great. He's very good. But, things like a director of football, they're still in the process of hiring one. They're still in they're in the process of an awful lot of stuff that had they gotten control, not in the middle of a season when they couldn't do much, like games were coming thick and fast in as well. And they had the misfortune of falling into a horror run of fixtures immediately after they took over the club. Maybe not immediately, but from the time Eddie Howe came in, the fixtures have been just brutal. And So there's been a bit, I won't say things have conspired against them, but they've been a little unlucky with their timing. I actually think in a roundabout way, you know, if Newcastle were 10th in the table, I think Steve Bruce would probably still be there. Because I think they would have stepped back then and said, right, we've got a bit of time. But such was the pressing need in the position they were in the table. Bruce had to go day one. He had to go, they were in such a bad state that they were dealt a kind of bad hand. And so therefore some of their actions, like in the beginning getting a manager, they leaked, I think it came from the Newcastle side, that Unai Emery was going to take the job. And it just didn't go down well, just stuff like that. But to be fair to them, they've never run a football club before, so they're going to make some mistakes as well, you know. But yeah, it's been a bit of a scramble for them. They're starting to get a hold of it now, I'd say, just in time for January. But in the beginning, it was fairly scattergun there for the first 5 or 6 weeks. But I don't really blame them. It's hard to blame them, you know.
I suppose, you know, you're on about hiring a director of football. I suppose the recruitment process of that can take time. So I suppose it's better to get the right man.
Yeah.
You know.
I think the manager situation. Yeah, the manager situation, they had no choice. They were up there, going to their head there,
Yeah.
If they'd been 10th or 11th or 12th in the table, they probably would have kept their powder dry. Eddie Howe might have got the job anyway, because he was a good candidate anyway. But I think in an ideal world, you'd say, geez, we'd need 6 or 8 weeks to come to kind of a decision like this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even with a director of football, I mean, you're literally talking about probably the most important person at the club is a director of football. Probably even more important than the manager in a macro sense, not in a day-to-day sense, but in a long-term 3 to 5 year plan type sense.
Yeah.
Director of football is probably the most important person, because if you have a good one, you have a massive advantage over other clubs. So I can understand why things have taken time and why there's been a few they've taken a few shots and missed. Do you know what I mean? There's been a bit of that, but it's to be kind of expected given the time constraint they had.
So just coming on to Eddie Howe, I suppose, the choice of manager. So I'm very friendly with a Celtic vlogger, Irish Mick.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose during the summer, he was doing regular daily updates. And at that time, he was almost 95% sure that Eddie Howe was going to take the Celtic job. It looked very likely for long periods of time. Now, as it turns out, Ange Postecoglou has come in and has done a very good job so far. I think they're ahead of schedule considering the horror show last year. So I think he's quite happy with that decision. But the question is, are you happy with Eddie Howe as an appointment? What was your gut thought when he was appointed manager? And do you think he's the right man to take Newcastle forward right now?
So I'll take that in 2 parts. So would he have been my choice, devoid of any context, day one when the club was bought? He wouldn't have been. So day one when the club was bought, I was crossing my fingers that Everton would sack Rafa. Yeah. And we get, you know what I mean? That day one, the first instinct was you'd never know. Everton might sack it. And again, had we been, it might happen yet, of course. It could have happened by the time
I was just going to say, if that's Rafa's strategy, he's on the right road to it,
Yeah, it's Agent Rafa, he's on the inside there at Everton.
Yeah, for both of us.
Yeah. But no, look, I think Everton, by the way, as an aside, would be mental to sack him. They'd be just mental. But it's probably going to happen anyway, because he's not going to win. He
was never wanted. It reminds me when he got the Chelsea job.
That's right.
In the eyes of the loyal, now maybe not without the damned United 2 comparison with Brian Clough taking over Leeds, but to the hardcore Everton fan base, Rafa will always be a red. And won the European Cup with Liverpool.
And to be fair, that is understandable. It is, because if it was the other way around, if Jurgen Klopp had won the league with Everton, you'd be going, I'm not too keen on this.
Yeah. He also in the past said as well that Everton were a small club, Liverpool managers, that kind of stuff for loyal fans.
Yeah. He probably meant that relative to Liverpool, to be fair.
Yeah.
But context doesn't matter to most people. Look, I think they'd be mental to sack him. But anyway, the Eddie Howe thing. So day one, I was saying there was talks of Conte and things like that. The thing was that given where we were on the table, I didn't want a guy like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would have. I mean, listen, is Antonio Conte in a vacuum a better manager than 90% of them? Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. Is Unai Emery in a vacuum a better manager than 90% of managers out there? Yes, in a vacuum he is. However, context is everything. And where you are in the table, and this is not an insult to Eddie Howe, by the way, but that's a habitat that he's familiar with.
It is, yeah.
And it's like he worked miracles at Bournemouth, a club that gets 12,000 people at their matches. Couldn't even fill a stadium with 12,000 people in it in the Premier League. And I mean, so I suppose my point is like a club the size of Newcastle with the kind of backing. I was happy with him. I was extremely happy that he got it. I was more happy that Bruce was gone. Be straight with you. Like they could have gave it to you, like, and I would have went, this is fucking brilliant. It wouldn't have mattered. They could have given it to anybody, literally anybody. Gary Monk got it, and
I would have looked after you with tickets for Newcastle games. I got them myself, like,
yeah.
Would have been happy, of course you would.
Literally anybody would have been better, but they could have gone down the road of, not that they would have, but they could have gone down the likes of the Allardyce road. They could have, that would have not gone down well, but they could have. It's their club. I learned this with 14 years of Mike Ashley. It doesn't matter what I think. It only matters, you know what I mean? They could have gone down. No, I don't think they would have ever done that because they were advised strongly. But then they were advised strongly day one that Bruce had to be gone before the first game, and they took a chance and left him there for the Tottenham game. And it turned a bit sour. I was there. I heard it. Yeah. You know, so he had to go the following day after that. He just had to. And time was just so much against them. And their position in the table was so much against them. But I would have said to you, and I think I might have said this to him, that I would have given the job to Eddie Howe, take over, no takeover. I think I said this to you when I was on before, that I had said a Brendan Rodgers-y type was the right fella for Newcastle. A kind of a coach who would make players better. And I have seen over the 5 or 6 weeks, I see Eddie Howe in a Brendan Rodgers kind of mold. If he's backed, I think we will improve over 3 or 4 or 5 years, and we could be in Europe. Do I think he could win the league? I have no idea. I have no basis for comparison. I don't know. But I do think he will get us playing good stuff, which he has done, to be fair. I listen to the radio a lot. I listen to TalkSport. I watch Sky. I watch BT. I watch whatever. Some pundits will say there's no real difference. Well, there isn't in the results. But if you watch the games, and watching the games is everything. If you watch every minute, like you watch every minute of every Liverpool game, pretty much. Fans know.
Brennan Malone, yeah.
Well, yeah. Supporters know their teams better than anybody. When you're watching the games every week, you could probably name a Liverpool player to me. I could say to you, I don't think that Oxlade-Chamberlain is much good. You could turn around to me and say, well, actually, this game, that game, and that game, he did this, and this. Because I don't know that. I didn't watch the games. I'm only going on a very broad kind of 10,000 foot to see him twice a year kind of a view. Yeah. See him play for England maybe or something. So kind of a way. Like I never thought Jordan Henderson was hectic. But he must be
the only one, to be fair. But
he must be, because he must be like, do you know what I mean? I just don't watch them every week. But he has to be if he's captain of the best club team or one of the best club teams in the world. He must be good, but I never thought he was any good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway,
and that is in no way prejudiced by his Sunderland association.
No, honest to God, no.
I know. To be fair, when Henderson came first, he was shocking. Like, as in.
Well, I think. Look, it's just my point is context, and you have to watch the games. And if you watch Newcastle play, so day one he came in, Newcastle were playing 5-3-2. Okay, they had Matt Ritchie, who was not a fullback, playing fullback. And they had Jacob Murphy, who was not a fullback, playing the other fullback. And every game Newcastle played, they got cleaned down the wings, right? Mm-hmm. And that was right. So he came in, and the first game, he left the 5-3-2 the way it was. And it wasn't great. I think because the first game he was supposed to be at was Brentford at home, but he got COVID. Eddie Howe did. So he missed that game. I think I have my games right. I should have researched this better, but you've got what you've got.
Yeah.
He definitely missed the first game to COVID. I think it was Brentford at home, 3-3. Then, yes, that's right. And the second game was Arsenal away. They lost. They were really poor at Arsenal, but they played 4 at the back, and they played a bit more aggressive. They tried to score. They got beat, but they tried to, they were trying. Then the next week, players like Emil Kraft, who was terrible, Jacob Murphy, who wasn't the fullback, Matt Ritchie, who wasn't the fullback. By the third or fourth game, those guys weren't playing anymore.
Right.
My point is, game by game by game, I've seen incremental. He's learning the players, because I know Matt Ritchie is not a left back because I've watched him for 4 years play for Newcastle, or 5 or 6 years play for Newcastle, and he's only ever played on the wing. And now that he's got a bit older and slower, they use him as a wing back occasionally when they're stuck. But I know he can't defend. He's never played in the backs in his life. But Eddie Howe doesn't necessarily know that. But after 4 games, he had it sussed. That's my point.
Yeah.
And, you know, in midfield, he's gone like, okay, John Joe Shelby can play ball. He has a mistake in him. He could get sent off. He could do something crazy. But he's a good player, to be fair. I'm going to play John Joe Shelby 90 minutes most days because he's a midfielder who can get us a goal maybe. He has a good pass in him. He's good on the ball. He's a bit mental. But in our position, Newcastle are so bad at the back. We have to score goals to get out of the situation we're in my opinion.
Definitely.
Newcastle have to rely on Maximin, Wilson, Shelby, Willock, Fraser. They're good go-forward players because Newcastle have forwards the other teams down there don't have, in my opinion. No team in the bottom 6 has Callum Wilson or anybody related to him. Nobody in the bottom 6 has Alan St. Maximin or anything related to him. You could say Leeds have Rafinha. That's probably the closest. But no one down there has the forwards Newcastle have. So if they can keep it anywhere reasonably holstered at all at the back. So that's his thing, is like, I'll play 4 at the back. It's not great. They're not great defenders. But we have firepower. We can score goals. And if the fixtures get more favourable, I do believe you'll start to see they'll start winning games. They're not going to win 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 or anything crazy, but they will start getting much better results than they did over his first 7 or 8 games because the fixtures will get kinder. Because I've seen they went to Liverpool, they were in the game, they looked like they could score. They went they played before that. Who did they play before Liverpool? They played City. That wasn't great. But
I think they played City last. They played City last on Sunday.
Yeah,
they lost 4-0.
I watched.
They played Leicester. They played Leicester before Liverpool. They lost 4-0 to Leicester.
Yeah, the Leicester performance was really bad. Okay, because Newcastle, I think, went to Leicester thinking we'll get a point here. We'll put 10 men behind the ball, which doesn't suit Newcastle at all because they can't defend, and it doesn't suit Eddie Howe because I actually don't. The one weakness I think he has, I don't think he's great at organising a defence. His time at Bournemouth fans would tell you that as soon as they stopped scoring 2 goals a game, they were in a bit of trouble. But I think Newcastle have the firepower to pull him out of it. But yeah, the Leicester game was really poor, but they were in the Liverpool game, and I watched them play City last Sunday. They lost 4-0. And some Newcastle fans think it was really poor. It was an awful hammering to get at home, all right.
They're the best team in the country, though.
True, but I watched, like, Newcastle were in it. It's hard to explain unless you watch every minute of every game. They were in the, like, Newcastle looked like, in the first half in particular, that they could score. Whereas last season under Bruce, and I've said this 2,000 times, we would play, West Brom, and we put 11 men behind the ball. And it's like, that's not a sustainable strategy. You can't, you're never going to get more than 35 points playing like that. That's fine against Man United and Man City and Liverpool and Chelsea. That's fine. But when you're playing Brentford at home, you have to go for it. And every now and again, it happened. I remember Liverpool last year. Fulham went to Liverpool last year and beat you 1-0. I remember watching it at home. Fulham last year, they went down, but they went down in flames, which is all right.
Yeah.
Whereas West Brom under Allardyce, they went down like a turtle inside in a shell, basically gone out every day to try and keep the score down. And if they nicked a win here and there, on the off chance it would keep them up. That was the way Steve Bruce played. We were like what's the name of them underwater centipedes that burrow themselves into the sand in the hopes that nobody can see them. That's what we were like. Yeah. It was like, if we don't attack you, you won't hammer us. That was Bruce's thing. We used to play Man City, and at halftime it'd be 2-0, and Bruce is kind of thinking, well, if this stays at 2-0, this is a great result. Eddie Howe's not like that. Do you know what I mean? So we're going to go to Anfield and we're going to get spanked, and we're going to play Man City and we're going to get spanked, and we're going to get spanked by Chelsea. And Man United will probably play us on Tuesday night. And if we don't like score a couple of goals, we could get beat 3-0 at home. And it looks really bad. But Newcastle are having a bit more of a go in these games. And against the bottom half teams, that's your formula to beat them. That's a sustainable formula. Like the way Leeds play. Leeds will attack you. They'll have a go. And every now and again, they'll get beat 5-0.
Or 7.
Or 7. But against the teams around them, they'll have goals in them and they'll win they'll win a lot of the head-to-head games that matter, because Leeds have an attacking style of play and they have a way of playing that leads to success. It just doesn't do well against the better teams, because the better teams, if you open up, they'll destroy you. But you have to write off. Like Bruce used to write off games against good teams by putting 11 men behind the ball and try and keep the score down. Eddie Howe, in my opinion, I won't say he's writing them off, but he's kind of writing them off by saying, well, we'll have a go and you'd never know. We might be up 2-0 after 10 minutes. Do you know
it's very hard. It's very hard to switch on and off. You're used to playing a certain way the whole time. You know, when you're used to not scoring, that can become a habit. You know. But I just have a point. I just want to make a point about Eddie Howe as well. I think I said to you at the time that when Newcastle were appointing a manager, there was going to be a Mark Hughes before there was a Mancini or a Pellegrini, to use an analogy with Man City when they came into money there about 13 years ago or so. And I think that Eddie Howe, I can't see Eddie Howe being the manager that wins the Premier League with Newcastle. I don't think he'll be there that long. Like, I can see the managers being a hire and fire him, similar to Chelsea. I can see there being a managerial merry-go-round at Newcastle over the years. Would you agree with that? Or you reckon that they get one good man and keep him for the long term, similar to what Pep, I suppose, is doing with Man City?
I suppose it all depends on results. Like, ultimately, I mean,
I suppose what I'm asking is, do you reckon that the owners, from what you know of the owners, do you think they have the patience to look at a project long term? Well, get adequate time. Like, for instance, if Newcastle get relegated at the end of the season, do you think Eddie Howe will get the bullet?
No. Okay. However, these boys didn't buy the club to finish 10th. No. That's what I would say. You don't like, they could have had any club in the world with the money they have. They could have bought Liverpool, they could have bought Man United, they could have bought, with the wealth these boys have, they could have bought anybody they wanted. Okay. And they didn't buy Newcastle. They bought Newcastle. So why did they buy Newcastle, right? First of all, massive support base. A support base that are just screaming for something to get behind. So it's a really easy win to buy Newcastle. Now, there's a lot of work to be done. But let's say the first 2 years foundation building. That's Eddie Howe all out, right? You know, regardless of what division Newcastle are in. I think, as I said to you, I think he's in the Brendan Rodgers-y kind of mold, where I think he will make us good. And I think there will come a point where we're in, let's just engage in fantasy here and say in 2025, we're sitting down 4 years from now having this conversation on Christmas Eve 2025. And Newcastle are 8th in the table, the Premier League table, just say. There'll come a point towards the end of that season where we'll be in a position to get into Europe and we might make it or we might not. And then you'll start to hear, you see the man takes to the real top echelon. That's when I think those conversations might happen. But I don't think, unless it goes disastrously, which I don't think it will, because I've seen enough in a short space of time to suggest to me that while he's made the odd mistake here and there in team selection and things, only in my opinion, I mean, I'm not an arbiter of what's right and wrong, but in my opinion, he's made a couple of little naive team selections, but on the whole, it's so much better than it was. I would also say that I think it would have been better with anybody because it was so bad before. But again, I think he will, given the backing, I can't see how we wouldn't be in the top half of the table in 3 or 4 years' time. Then you might start hearing, okay, well, we're hitting a glass ceiling now. Now it's time to make a change. But if we don't hit that glass ceiling, I don't expect him to be removed. If we keep getting better, if the trajectory is always up, it's probably going to be him. But I think when that trajectory slows or stalls, I think that's when you would start having that conversation. And I've no doubt that they will have those conversations when that time arrives. And I do expect it. I do expect when we start knocking on the door under Eddie Howe, I have no idea whether that door will open or not, because there's no basis for comparison. But I'd say if he fails to make the breakthrough into the upper echelon, that's when that conversation would be had, I think.
Can I just ask as well, what do you think of Amanda Stevely? Are you happy with her? Are you kind of happy with the role she's played?
Amanda Stavely had interest in, you might remember this,
Liverpool.
She was involved in the Man City takeover. She kind of like a broker, kind of. She had interest in Liverpool. I don't know what the story was there. You'll know more than I do about that.
She was with Dubai. She was with Dubai International Capital, and they came very close.
Right.
Buying Liverpool back then, but unfortunately, powers be at the time thought it'd be a good idea to sell to Hicks and Gillette, two American cowboys.
Okay, yeah, I know. I remember Hicks and Gillette. I just wasn't sure of the timeline. Yeah.
So if leverage buyouts, and if Rafa had Dubai's money that time, like they would have climbed up, But
so she has form for this. She tried a couple of years back, but couldn't raise the money. Couldn't get the right people to back her, right? Because for whatever reason, just couldn't do it. To be fair to her, she took a lot of stick over the last number of years from various parts of the media. Basically, like Mike Ashley publicly called her a time waster, called her a tire kicker. I don't know if he called her a tire kicker, but he definitely called her a time waster. He actually put a statement out saying that she was a time waster. People on various pundits said she was a tire kicker and that she was, basically trying to make herself famous by getting her name in the news and with stuff like this. Because you can imagine you'd raise your profile fairly fast if you tried to take over a football club. Mm-hmm. That was all, to be fair, thrown at her. And to be fair to her, she came back with the people who had the money and got the deal over the line. Now, again, she's done it. She's taken over a football club. I think there is a bit of, there's always, in my opinion, a bit of an anti-Newcastle thing in the media, right? Whether I'm imagining it or not, no. But I think it's an anti-North of England thing, more so than an anti-Newcastle thing, a little bit.
Yeah.
They don't, I'm sure Liverpool get it, and they have gotten it historically. There's no doubt about that. Your London media would prefer if the Premier League decided in London every year, I think. I think that's no secret. And I think there's a little bit of, well, what are you taking over them for? Why have you an interest in them? Why didn't you buy West Ham? Why didn't you buy Tottenham? Why didn't you buy somewhere fashionable like that? Do you know what I mean? There's a bit of that. And I think that, I think she's loved by the Newcastle supporters now, obviously, right? But again, I say this like a bit like the Eddie Howe, Steve Bruce thing. Literally anybody could have taken over the club, and it'd be like they'd be a kind of a hero. Now, right now they are. If Newcastle don't sign players in January, just say, and the whole thing is badly run for the next 18 months, they won't be popular anymore. And by the way, that's the way it should be. Like any manager, like if Jurgen Klopp tomorrow loses 10 games in a row for Liverpool, he'll be sacked. That's what'll happen.
Well, we lost 6 home games in a row last season, which was almost a club record, but maybe we held on to them, thankfully.
Well, last season was a bit outlier. But if Man City finished 6th this season, would Guardiola be manager next year? Debatable.
One bad season out of 6 or 7. Yeah, it is debatable, I suppose.
The point is, they will be judged more fully in the fullness of time. But I think in the short term, like I said, they've done a lot of things that I've been impressed with. Like their community engagement has been excellent. They've been great with the food bank and things like that they needn't bother with. They're popular anyway. They will be popular in the short term, no matter what they do. If all the Sports Direct signs are down now from the stadium, little things like that make you wildly popular in the short term. So it's a little early to judge, but I will say to her about her is, there was a lot thrown at her about being a time waster and stuff like that. And in the end, she got the deal over the line. Say what you like. I think the bit of it is the fact that she's a woman as well. She gets criticised. And there's a bit of that. But look, the club is no longer whether people like it or don't like it or criticise or don't. The club is no longer owned by Mike Ashley, and there's one person responsible for it.
Just as an example of I suppose, the media maybe being against Newcastle, I remember seeing in the Daily Mail there a couple months ago that the Daily Mail printed an image of Amanda Steveley, comparing her to the Lion from Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And that's kind of like a condition she has.
That's right.
Face conditions, which is all pretty poor taste, and for that to be printed in a national broadsheet, I thought was pretty disgraceful, so I think there's definitely merit what you're saying there. There could be a bit of
I think
agenda there.
There's a bit of the look again. I've said this to you before when I was on. I think there's a bit of this kind of deluded Geordie thing, that kind of, and I think it comes from post Keegan time. There was this perception that Newcastle fans expect to win the league every year. Now, I don't know where it comes, because when I was over there, I certainly, there was none of that when I was there. They were just all delighted to be out on the tear and having the day out and having the crack. But I suppose there's a bit, and I think the media know as well, right? So like take TalkSport, for instance. They know that the Newcastle fan base is really fervent and really passionate. And if they say something, it's no different if someone comes on and says something really disparaging about the Liverpool fans. You're going to get some Liverpool fans calling in. Yeah. It's going to happen. They know this. It's a tried and tested model. If they say disparaging things about West Ham, they're going to have West Ham fans calling in. But the Newcastle fans, we don't help ourselves. We're an easy target. Because there's Newcastle have more fan podcasts than they have points this season. You know what I mean? There's more, for a club that don't win anything, the amount of media attention that Newcastle gets is. Are we including
that under this stage?
It's more, but the media attention Newcastle gets is very disproportionate to their success. Like West Ham don't get talked about to the same degree, and they've had more recent success, I think. Everton don't really get talked about quite. They do now because things aren't going well, but as a general rule, and Everton won the league in 82, I think it was. Did they win? Was it 82? Was it
87 one? The year I was born, actually. 87.
Oh, wasn't it? So they've won, they've won a bit, and they won the FA Cup in the 90s, and it's been in Europe a good bit, so they've been fairly successful. And I think it's like that, Newcastle fans, a bit of an easy target because we're so I suppose the level of interest is so high that when someone kind of pokes the bear, we react. My thing, I don't really, engage with the thing online, but I do read it and it does piss me off. Do you know what I mean? The thing about the thing you pointed out in the Daily Mail is a prime example. Now that's probably an extreme example, but I'll give you a good example. When Eddie Howe was hired, there was an article written, I think it was Oliver Holt, and it was in the Mail again. Newcastle fans don't have a great affinity for Ollie Holt, but anyway, it's a different thing. And he wrote an article kind of saying, new owners, it wasn't supposed to go like this. Eddie Howe wasn't supposed to be Newcastle manager, and Newcastle fans are happy with Eddie Howe, but you shouldn't be happy because you wanted a better manager and you should be angry. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like policing the opinion of Newcastle fans by saying, you almost had Unai Emery. You should be kicking off about that. Not being delighted with Eddie Howe. You should be kicking off that your owners kind of made a balls of the Emery thing. Well, they did probably, like I said to you, there was some shoots and misses in the beginning, but there's going to be we had 14 years of not even shooting.
Rome wasn't built in a day, do you know what I mean? So.
We had 14 years of a guy who didn't even make an attempt to have an ambitious shot. I would rather, is Unai Emery a better manager in a vacuum? Probably, yeah. Has Unai Emery managed in the bottom six in the Premier League? No. So it's horses for court. You know what I'm saying? So I can be happy either way because the previous 14 years was so terrible. I mean, most of it. And the previous 2 years was just the worst ever. I mean, the last 2 years supporting Newcastle, I would definitely in my lifetime was by far the worst. And we've had years in the Championship that were 100 times better than the last 2 years. The last 2 years was just horrendous. Like, it was a 2.5. It was horrible. So I am happy. I'm not going to fucking apologise for it.
I'd just like to chat about the game last week at Anfield. I suppose Liverpool Newcastle is synonymous with Premier League history, mainly because of the 2-4-3s back in the late 90s, but there's goals guaranteed. It's very rare you get a 0-0 draw with Liverpool and Newcastle, and so as was the case last week. Before the game, I suppose, we had Van Dijk and Fabinho out with COVID, which I think gave a bit of a boost. It was a good leveler as such. Watching that game, it's actually funny because it reminded me of a game between Swansea and Liverpool, I think 2013-14, the year we nearly won the league. John Joe Shelby scored first, and then I kind of immediately regretted it, and then felt duty bound to provide an assist to settle the score, which actually happened in both games.
Right.
Now, a couple of decisions didn't go Castle's way that night. Jota's goal was a controversial enough moment, and it arguably changed the game, where 2 Newcastle players went down in the box injured, and Liverpool played on. Now, granted, it was about 2 or 3 seconds. What was your thoughts on that? Do you think the goal should have been chalked off?
Okay, I think that as a general rule, in my experience, and I'm on the sideline of football pitches around Ireland every single Saturday and Sunday, had that happened on a Sunday morning in my local place, that goal would have been disallowed.
Yeah.
Is my opinion. Because I've seen it happen. Normally, player goes down in the box. If he's interfering with what the head injury thing, like, look, Mike Dean is the worst referee in the Premier League. We all know this. But Mike Dean's answer that, I thought he hurt his back, not his head, was a bit weak.
Especially when it's VAR. There's no point having VAR for music. Like,
things are going to go against you. Bad decisions happen. Newcastle will get some. Newcastle, I guarantee you, right? We'll get a dodgy penalty between here and the end of the year that'll win us a game we didn't deserve to win. It'll happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll balance it out. Like,
I'm not too upset about it. What I would say is, it's terrible refereeing, one way or the other. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not making a call there, or come out after and say, do you know what, lads? Hands up, I missed that. That would be better than Mike Dean lying, in my opinion, and saying, I thought he hurt his back. Bullshit. That's not true. Like, you either thought he was injured with a head injury or you thought he was fine. If you want to turn around to the camera and say, look, I thought he was great. I didn't see him. The goal was gone in before it. Look, it's a mistake on my part. That would have been better than saying, he hurt his back, not his, like, I wasn't aware Mike Dean was a doctor. Like,
it was like De Gea's goal, or the goal when De Gea had the clash for United against Arsenal. I suppose you saw it as well. It was 2 United players that clashed. In that instance, it was 2 Newcastle players that crashed or that clashed together. So it was just tough shit in his eyes. But
that's right. And if he said that would have been fine. If he just said, lads, shit happens, lads.
As a Liverpool fan watching that game, it didn't sit easily with me that goal was given, I'll be honest. And if I was at the other end, I probably wouldn't have been over the moon, if I'm brutally honest, you know?
Well, if you see, this is the this is the thing now that's gone on a little bit lately with Newcastle fans is, well, if it happened at the other end, it wouldn't have been allowed. This is the thing now you see that you're getting.
Well, one thing I just wanted to put record as well, that there was Newcastle fans are coming out to social media after the game and saying that Mike Dean is from Merseyside and this and that. But Mike Dean is a season ticket holder at Tranmere, just to clarify, not Liverpool.
Yeah. I think that's all bollocks anyway. Do you know what I mean? But I think what it is it's not about Liverpool. It's, if it was against Manchester United, Newcastle fans are kind of saying, well, it wouldn't have been happening at their end. Do you know what I mean? That's the it's nothing to do with Liverpool per se. It's to do with the top 6. Do you know what I'm saying? This is the thing.
Yeah.
Because Newcastle fans have this thing in their head that top 6 clubs didn't want Newcastle to be taken over in the first place. Now the Premier League are trying to change rules about sponsorship so that Newcastle can't be pumped money into the way Man City were. And they see it as being, well, it was all right when Mike Ashley wasn't paying for Sports Direct signs in the ground. No one had a problem with that when we weren't getting any money for sponsorship. And now all of a sudden that we have all the money in the world, now it's a problem. That's the way Newcastle fans, and to be fair, there's a grain of truth in that. It is a bit pointed. There's no doubt that the Premier League clubs getting together to bring in rules now to stop related party sponsorships, which is what I think that's what it's called, like companies that are a bit like Man City with Etihad or whatever. They're trying to limit now sponsorships from parties who are related to the owners to a certain amount. That's very pointed now. At the time it's been done, that Newcastle are literally facing into the month of January with the spending power that they've never had before in their lives. But ultimately, all that thing will do is slow down progress. You'll just have, you know what I mean? That's all that'll do. But it's more to this. It's not the one thing against Liverpool that Newcastle fans are maybe as upset about, despite the fact that that's what they're tweeting about. It's more, if you add that, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, if you add all those little things together, it kind of, it's like this big ball of conspiracy, like wool entangled, you know, and yeah, that's the way it seems to some people. Now, I don't believe in any of that shit. Like, I just think Mike Dean's a bad referee.
Yeah. Well, that decision, I suppose, did turn the game, because Salah goes down, scores again 4 minutes later. In the second half,
that's a game they would have lost anyway. Like, this is the thing. Liverpool had 23 shots to Newcastle's 5. Liverpool had 75% of the ball to Newcastle's 25. That's a game you would have lost anyway. No.
However, last season,
last
season, and this was very much coming into my head in that last 20 minutes of the game. You know, Liverpool didn't put the game to bed. And that game, I think it was 2-2 as well last season, wasn't it? It was 2-2.
Was it 1-1, Joe Willock?
It was a 1-1, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I suppose it was a late equaliser in the match.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous one disallowed. Wilson had a handball. Remember that?
Yeah, and then
Willock scored a minute later. Yeah,
and that game is very much in my head in the second half of the game. The penalty incident with Trent. He got the ball, but there was a penalty given the night before between West Ham and Arsenal. There's no consistency, and that's what's frustrating people, is there's no consistency with the VAR, there's no consistency with decisions. But Newcastle were potentially unfortunate not to have gotten the penalty there. I would agree with that.
Could Newcastle have drawn that game? Yeah. On another night, yeah. Had Liverpool had their shooting boots on, wouldn't have mattered. This is the thing. Like, you have to look. Like, I am a lot of things, but I'm very fair. Right, I might be a prick, but I'm a prick all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't discriminate.
I treat everybody equally badly, right? So it's like, fair enough. Newcastle were probably screwed a little bit with the Mike Dean thing, the Jota goal, the Jota one, the penalty. I could take or leave, because look, about VAR, right? I hate VAR. I think VAR should not exist. The only thing that should exist is goal line technology. That's it. The ball is over the line or it's not over the line. The referee is there. There's 2 linesmen there. Put up the flag if you think it's a free. Leave it down if you don't think it is. And you're going to make some mistakes sometimes. This crack of, you score a goal, you're inside in the stadium, you don't know whether to celebrate or not, because some fucking dickhead in the studio is going to draw a little red line and a little blue line to check was your toe offside. That has to go. Replay doesn't work.
VAR in theory is a brilliant idea.
Yeah, in theory, but it's
when it's applied. But it's the way it's applied, and the thing is, you will never, even in GAA, with obviously people mightn't get that with this thing in the UK, but when they brought in Hawkeye in hurling and football to track the ball over the bar or not, like this, there's a mistake, a huge mistake one day in a Limerick Galway minor semi-final where they had it set up for hurling football. You will never remove human error from sport. Bottom line. Because you're people, right? At the end of the day,
I work in a factory. I operate robots and various fancy machines that will be boring to most people listening. If I enter in the wrong code, if I enter in the wrong thing, day one, that machine is going to make mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. It's as simple as that. The human being, when you put a human into any process, you get human error.
Yeah.
If you could take pilots out of airplanes would never crash. Most accidents on the road, in car accidents, most aircraft accidents, most helicopter crashes, most train crashes, you name it, Chernobyl, any mistake, any big thing that ever went wrong ever, there was probably a human error somewhere along the line that set the wheel in motion. A very unwitting, well-intended human error, I've no doubt. I don't believe that Mike Dean sauntered in the gate of Enfield going, how are we going to fuck Newcastle tonight, lads? Do you know what I mean? That didn't happen. But it was just a mistake. He made a bad decision. He saw two guys down the 6-yard box. The ball was in the net and he was like, shit goal. Do you know what I mean? Because he was forced. There was 40,000 people roaring and shouting. He was like, shit, goal. I have to give it now. That's what happened. And I don't blame. That could have happened to me. It could have happened to you. When I'm coaching young lads, I tell them, if you win a free kick 30 yards out from goal, okay, put your hand on the ball, tell the striker to run in behind, pass it in behind him quickly, and finish it to the net. It's a brave referee that will pull that ball over the net and make you take the free kick again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's what happened Mike Dean the other night. It was an honest, I've no doubt it was an honest mistake. This thing of referees out to screw you. Look, I believe there are referees that don't like certain players. I believe that for a fact.
They're conflicted.
Definitely. I believe that there probably were referees that didn't like Roy Keane because he was abusing them for 90 minutes every Saturday. I believe there's referees didn't like Alan Shearer. I believe there's referees didn't like whoever, Diego Maradona, you name it. Do you know what I mean? I believe that. I believe there's a referee that if Jordan Henderson goes in over the top of the ball, he's like, well, I'm sending this fucker off because he's abusing me every Saturday with the last 6 years. Like, do you know what I mean? I do believe that referee, like we're all human.
Yeah.
If you come up to me and effing line in my face every single Saturday, and it's always you, I'll remember that. But I don't believe the team there's a prejudice against any particular team. So that conspiracy stuff, I'm not having it. Yeah. I just think it was a bad decision in isolation.
Yeah, but I suppose there's no point. It's like my grandfather used to say, there's no point going to the doctor unless you do what he tells you to do. There's no point having VAR unless you actually use it. Do you know what I mean? It's just like an ornament in the corner there. Otherwise, you know.
Yeah.
So I suppose just there on the night. I suppose as the Liverpool fan watching the game, I was a relieved man when Trent scored that screamer to make it 3-1. To be honest, but what I did say watching that game is you acquitted yourselves really well on the night. You played really good football, COVID absentees aside, and I would be optimistic enough for the future after watching that game. One thing I just wanted to address about that match, kind of off the field. You mentioned food banks earlier on there, and Newcastle is a big thing. There's a lot of Liverpool fans who were at the last number of matches. Their nose are very much out of joint, like Wolves, Leicester, and Newcastle fans, sadly, spent a good percentage of the game at Anfield singing Feed the Scousers, do they know it's Christmas time at all? And I don't know, I just think that's kind of pretty bad form considering all three cities aren't in the position of prosperity themselves, you know, a bit of empathy. Now, you can say it's banter, and obviously Liverpool fans are no one saint either, you know, I'm not saying that for a second. When you're bringing poverty into at Christmas time, I don't know, I just think it's gone down very badly with Liverpool fans.
Well, I would say it's like, I listened to a podcast the other day where it was two Newcastle fans were in the away end, two fellas a bit older than us now, maybe 10 years older than us. And they were kind of, they mentioned it. They said there was a fairly large smattering in their area. So I don't know how many away fans would have been there. We'll say there was 3,000. They were saying it was maybe 40% of that 3,000 were singing that.
Yeah.
And in the part of wherever they were standing, they were, you know, it was a lot of young lads, and they were like telling them, like, shut up, basically. But it's very hard to tell 1,400 people to shut up.
Yeah. Well, there's idiots. There's idiots in every fan base. There's idiots in every fan base.
Exactly. But I think what it is right. If you sing stuff like that, you don't know where you came from. And when I went over to Newcastle, what I noticed was stuff was cheap. If I went into the shop, I said this to you the other night, stuff was cheap in terms of compared to Ireland. Now, Ireland is expensive compared to every place. But if I went for a pint, when I went for a pint in Newcastle, it was a bit cheaper than I expected. Went into the shop, I got more value for stuff. I wasn't counting my money now, but like I went to the shop. I got like 6 items. I forgot. I think I told you this. I forgot toothpaste. I forgot something else. Went over to the shop, bought 5 or 6 items, gave your man £10, and he gave me back like £4 change. And I was like, did he make a mistake? Like for a split second, I put the money in my pocket and went out the door. My point is, if I went into a shop here in Ireland and bought those same 5 or 6 items, I wouldn't have had change. I wouldn't have got them for a tenner. I would have had to spend more. And so my point is that I got the impression while I was over there that like people weren't massively affluent. It wasn't an affluent area. There wasn't like money falling out of people's pockets, or that's the impression I got. No different to here in Limerick, like where I'm from, or in Cork. The vast majority of people are working class people. Say whether it's Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, wouldn't matter. Outside of the big metropolis capital city, the vast majority of people are earning not a massive amount more than the minimum wage in any country. I would say that's the same for every country. So the food bank in Newcastle is a huge thing. When I was over there, I gave £20 to the food bank, and I went in to watch the match. Didn't know any of the people there. Never met them before in my life, but here in my own soccer club in Newcastle West Town, we did a food collection 2 weeks ago and dropped all the food down. I actually don't know where it went. I should know, but I don't know. The local guards here in Newcastle West picked up the food and carried it away to a central collection point, and it went off wherever it went off to give to people for Christmas time that need it. That goes on in Liverpool. It probably goes on in Glasgow. It probably goes on in Cardiff. It probably goes on in most cities, I would imagine. So there's no fan base in a position to throw stones like that. Is the point I'm trying? Was the long-winded way of getting to? No one's in a position to throw those stones. Nobody. There's poor people in every corner of the world. Like
Liverpool and Everton fans unite for the food banks. Suppose the club colours doesn't come into it, that they help each other out, and I suppose unemployment is an issue in the Anfield area. There's not a lot of jobs in around the area. Liverpool, I suppose, has high unemployment. And that's where the chance, like sign on with a pin in your hand because you never get a job, that type of stuff, all the chance. Singing songs, it's like Leicester last night, their fan base seemed to be pro-Tories, and
okay,
and obviously that didn't go down brilliantly with Liverpool fans, and it was kind of, Liverpool is a Labour city. I'm sure Newcastle is as well. You know what I mean? Like they vote Labour, like, but I suppose just want to share an anecdote. It's kind of relevant here that Jake, in the first episode, he was at a Liverpool-Chelsea match once in London, and the Chelsea fans were singing, "In your Liverpool slums, you search the dustbin for something to eat, you find a dead rat, you think it's a treat, in your Liverpool slums." And Liverpool fans in unison sang together at the same time, singing, "Thank you very much for paying our gyros. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very, very much." So gyros is the unemployment,
right,
in England. So I thought it was an example of Scouse wit there in reaction. But I suppose
with
it being Christmas, the Rosa song is relevant anyway. So
it's like, look, there's just no need of it. Like if you want to call Henderson fucking Mackham, whatever, have at it. Like, but like, or if Newcastle, if Liverpool fans want to say Shelby looks like Spider-Man or something stupid, I don't know. Like, fine, like grand. These fellas are millionaires; they'll be fine. There's no fear of them. Do you know what I mean? But like, stuff like, as I said, there's no one in a position to throw stones.
Just another example. There's a guy we both know, and obviously we won't name any names now, but he thinks it's funny to refer to Liverpool fans as bin dippers, on social media. And the point I'm kind of making there, and I have said it to him, that 75% of Liverpool people of Irish heritage, going back to the Irish famine, predominantly.
Right.
And, a lot of Irish people, we wouldn't have minded some bins to be able to forage through at that time because the country was starving to death. So I think kind of for Irish people to call Liverpool fans bin dippers is another thing. You're kind of potentially mocking your own people there as well,
Yeah, look, it's just, here's what I'd say. There's enough to go at. There's enough things you can sing about.
Or in poverty.
You know what I mean? Without going there. Yeah. Poverty, there's no need of it. There's no need of it because it's just, like I said, it's There's no city that doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like the other thing is, where do they think the players come from? Where do like any support base, whether it's Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, anybody, where do you think most of these players came out of? Do you know what I mean? The vast majority of them come from the poorest areas. Without those poor areas, without those young lads not having a PlayStation in their house, that's why they're outside kicking football. Do you know what I mean?
You mentioned Eddie Howe a while ago there, the achievement, football is a working class sport. We all know that. But the achievement, you mentioned Bournemouth couldn't fill their stadium. There's a reason for that. Bournemouth is one of the richest parts of the country, like.
Yeah.
In southern England. Would I be correct in saying that Bournemouth is a very rich?
As far as I know, to be
affluent. It's a middle class. It's a middle class town anyway. It's not a working class town. I'd be pretty sure in that. So the fact that he managed to attract players to come to Bournemouth and kept in the Premiership for 4 or 5 years, is it?
Yeah, I think they went down the 5th year.
Yeah,
I think to have Bournemouth in the league for 5 years is, I mean, even clubs like Brighton, having them in them being in the Premier League is an achievement. But they've had a lot of investment. But so did Bournemouth. Like, that's what helped them get there. But at the same time, Eddie Howe took them over when they were, I think, on the verge of going out of the league. Were they the bottom of League 2 in around there? He brought them up, I think, to League 1 or up to the bottom of the Championship. And then I think he went to Burnley. That didn't go well. And he went back to Bournemouth then and got them up to out through the Championship and into the Premier League. But kept them there for a long time. Like a lot of players who were in the team when he had them in League 1 were in the Premier League as well. I think there was a guy that played centre back for them. Was his name Cook? They had a guy who played in all the divisions with them in the Premier League. Like, that's unheard of stuff. Like, I mean, I remember Robert Earnshaw. There was a kind of a common pub quiz question, like, who was the player that has scored in every division of the Football League? I think it was Robert Earnshaw. But he wasn't like, it was novel, but it wasn't like he was good in the Premier League. He might have scored a goal. Whereas, like, a lot of these guys at Bournemouth actually played in the Premier League for 3, 4, 5 seasons and did all right. Yeah. These were guys who played in League 1, like had probably never dreamed. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was a massive achievement. Like, and the fact that they didn't have massive support makes it harder because you have to grow from the inside then, because you have to use academy players because you haven't got the money. So yeah, it was he did unbelievable work at Bournemouth, and if ask any Bournemouth fan, they will tell you that he's the best thing that ever happened to them.
Oh, without a doubt, definitely club icon. So our last episode, with a full episode on, I suppose, your very first trip over to St. James's Park, and you're here there today as well. Well, by the looks of it.
Yeah.
So you have plans to hopefully go back over for the United game with Omricon. The way things are going, how is that looking right now? A few days ago.
Not great, Bob. I'd say now, like, I'm inclined to just rearrange it for later in the year, this stage of the game. My fear is, right, so the problem I have is I'm vaccinated, so, like, whatever. The problem is that, like, if I go and I come back, I'll have a PCR test done before I go, and that's fine. But, like, they've put there have been some restrictions put in England whereby it's like table service in pubs and things like that. And if I'm going over on my own, like,
yeah,
sitting down at a table on your own in the pub, like, I don't know about it. I can do that. I can watch the match here at home on my couch on my own if I want to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I suppose that's the whole point. You want to mingle with other supporters, get to know other supporters,
right,
that type of thing. So,
well, what was so nice about it last time was I got to meet a lot of the locals. Because I was on my own, people went out of their way to say hello to me, which was lovely, And whereas, I mean, I'll give away the ticket to somebody that wants it. Do you know what I mean? And I'll rearrange and come back maybe in March time. I had my eye on a game there in March, the Crystal Palace game on the 19th. That was kind of the one I had my eye on. But yeah, it's the way it is at the moment. I think it might just be less hassle for me, because the other thing is, if I came home and I started feeling unwell then a day or two later, panic stations then. I might get, like, going for a test, you could test positive, off work in for another week. That's a pure smear. Like, it's just, I don't know about it. I mean, as much now as I want to go, and I'm really looking forward to going, it's gone to the stage now where I just don't think it's worth the hassle. I just not.
Well, I suppose as fans of the channel will know, and I'll put the link for as well. On my own personal channel, I'm going to be doing a lot of vlogs. I started at Parkhead a few weeks ago at Celtic and Hearts, and I'm going to be doing vlogs in different games and stadiums over the coming year, definitely. And I would love to experience the atmosphere at St James's Park. So you never know, the two of us might be going live from St James's Park someday in the not too distant future. So we'll keep in touch on that. I kind of got stung myself as well with the old Omicron situation in the UK. I had a ticket sorted for Celtic and Rangers, which was meant to be Sunday week. And the reason I had a ticket sorted, it was a friend of a friend whose dad was going on holidays that weekend. Now, initially, it was meant to be restricted to 500 people.
Right.
But they pushed forward the winter break, and it's now rescheduled to the 2nd of February, when hopefully Omicron will have fucked off by then.
Hopefully.
Wishful thinking, but unfortunately, the guy whose ticket I was due to get, his holiday isn't extending until the 2nd of February. So, so literally, I have flights booked and no tickets. So if anyone happens to be watching this and there for Celtic and Rangers 2nd of February, hit me up. You won't find me ungrateful. But on a serious note, I have helped a lot of people get Canfield for matches, and I'd be more than happy. As Kieran will testify, I am a man of my word. So
yeah, fairness.
I will definitely look after whoever, if someone does watch this and wants to help. Much appreciated. But look, to be fair, these are first world problems. They're
yeah.
And if there are people in a lot worse situation than us, and we will get going again. I look at the Premier League table there, Kieran, and I suppose it looks pretty damning after 18 games that Newcastle have 1 win and 7 draws, 10 points from a possible 54. Now, I thought I'd solved one of the great mysteries there. I was looking at your fixtures for the season, and I had 2 wins: Norwich on the 7th of August and Burnley there a few weeks ago. And it was wrecking in my head, like, how is this not counted? Like has everyone else just missed it? You know? And then I just realised that for some reason, Newcastle and Norwich decided to play a novel pre-season friendly a week before the Premier League starts, despite the fact that they'll be playing each other twice later in the season. I just thought that was mental. Like, normally pre-season friendlies are against clubs from either different, well, it couldn't really do different countries because of COVID, but usually championship clubs or Scottish clubs or Welsh clubs even, like, you know, just to mix it up. But no, Newcastle and Norwich.
Well, I think what happened there was, like, Bruce probably rang up Mike Ashley and was like, Mike, we want to play a friendly. All right. Who had you in mind? Well, we were thinking of going down to play Notts Forest. Yeah. Wouldn't Norwich be a bit closer, no? Well, I suppose it is, but sure, like, they're in our division. No. I mean, bring Norwich up to play in St James. I fucked enough to paying for a bus, lads.
Yeah.
Tell Norwich come up now if they want to play. I'm not paying for. Fuck that. Do you realise the price of a coach, lads? I'll have to get 2 coaches. It's not happening, lads. Tell Norwich come up now. So I'd say that's what happened. And I think, it's just, do you know what it was? It was an on-brand fixture, an on-brand club. It's like Bruce is like, oh, well, I've 9 rounds of golf later on in Cheshire, and if I want to make it back for 5 o'clock, we'll get Norwich up here for a 12 o'clock kickoff, and I'll get my 9 holes in, like, when I get back. It's just, it's, you know, the bare minimum amount of effort and thought put into it. Like, who's free? Oh, Norwich will say they'll play us. Oh yeah, tell Norwich, come on up, and we'll play 2 B teams, and it'll be absolutely of no benefit whatsoever to us going into the Premier League season. That's super, yeah. And we'll charge the fans £45 a head to get in and watch, or something stupid like that. You know, so yeah, that doesn't surprise me one iota.
The one win you had this season was against Burnley, which is kind of good for the psychological side of things, the head-to-head, because they are one of your main challengers. One thing I'd like to share as well, the Brentford game. One of the funniest parts I put in the trailer, actually, for the last interview, about Joe Linton, that seeing him live, that he had the opposite of a magnet in his foot towards the ball.
Yeah.
That Saturday, I was uploading our interview from the last time. I literally clicked upload, and guess what happens?
A belter of a goal.
Sky Sports update: Joe Linton has just scored for Newcastle against Brentford. So I thought that was a
cracker of a goal as well. Actually, do you know what? No, I as I said, I might be a prick, but I'm a prick all the time. I do owe that man an apology. Since that, Linton has, I won't say he's been Newcastle's best player, but he's been one of them. Now, Eddie Howe came in, right, and like I told you this, Bruce used to put him up front, and he's not a striker. He played for Hoffenheim out in the left wing, and he wasn't too bad on the left wing. Now, he was never worth 40 million, but that's not Joe Linton's fault. I saw him in person, and I never in my life saw anybody as bad. He was just so bad. I can't describe how bad he was. He couldn't control a ball to save his life. He's played now. Howe came in, and he's playing him in kind of like centre midfield kind of, and he's using him a bit like a kind of a Mohamed Sissoko kind of. If I'm trying to relate it to Liverpool now a little bit, kind of like big and powerful and covers ground and puts tackles in. That's kind of what he's using Joe Linton for, and he's actually really good at that. He's actually really good at putting himself about physically and getting in and winning the ball. And his touch is still not great, but like he's at least Howe is putting him doing the things that he can do. Bruce was trying to get him to do stuff that he couldn't do. Do you know what I mean? So he's actually playing a lot better, but he's kind of playing within himself. But his defensive side of the game has been excellent since Howe came in. The goal is a bonus, but he's been way more assertive and way more sure of what he's doing. He's having shots now in games. I mean, he used to be afraid of his life of taking a shot before for fitness, but he's much improved. So I do kind of owe him a little bit of an apology. That notwithstanding, I was factually correct at the time that I said it. But since then, to be fair, he has really improved and has been one of the bright lights since then. So credit where it's due now, in fairness to Joe Linton. I'm going to say he was shite when I saw him before. I have to say now that he has improved since, and he has really improved.
Maybe he watched your episode and he's kind of anxious to prove you wrong here, and so
90 grand a week, I doubt it. You wouldn't know though. You wouldn't know. I don't think he heard some Irish fella. Maybe my accent stuck out. Maybe like some fella in like row O, seat 23 was like, "You're fucking shit, Joe Linton," and he was like, "Oh, sorry, I'll get better. I'll work really hard now, Kieran, for the next 2 weeks until you see me again against Brentford." I don't think that happened.
Moving on to the transfer window, who would you like to see joining in the window to strengthen the squad? How many players do you think you need and you're hoping to get?
So need, want, and will get. I'll break into try kind of three. Newcastle need centre backs badly. Newcastle need 4 defenders, if the truth be told, but they would get away with 2 if they signed a really good centre back and a really good right back. They'd be all right. If they signed a right back and a left back and a really good centre back, that would be great. They badly need a centre midfielder who can kind of break up the play and cover ground. Isaac Hayden is all right, but he's kind of a poor man's version of that. They need someone like, your man Doucouré at Everton. Someone like that can cover every blade of grass and wins the ball, breaks up the play, and can get you going forward. Because Shelby, for all his critics, Shelby can play ball. If he's someone, now he needs someone to do the running for him because he's not very mobile. But if Shelby had someone, like if Newcastle signed your man, Bissouma from Brighton, he'd be perfect. Someone like that's young, or Calvin Phillips at Leeds would be a deadly signing. Someone in that mold who will cover ground, win the ball, and get you going forward. Kind of a David Batty-ish kind of a player, or the ideal type player would be someone with speed who goes box to box and can get a goal for you if you could get a player like that. But I think those players aren't available and they're hard to get. But definitely Newcastle need a couple of defenders. They need a centre midfield player, a backup for Callum Wilson. This is all stuff I was saying to you in the summer when you were asking me. The positions haven't really changed. They only have one striker, really. Dwight Gale is only a backup, but he doesn't seem to be in favour. They need a second striker for Wilson. Someone like Divock Origi from Liverpool would be brilliant.
We need him to come off the bench to score important goals, though. So
winners of the Champions League and things like that. Yeah. But someone like that who maybe, at Newcastle, Divock Origi would be challenging Callum Wilson. He wouldn't just be second fiddle every single day. But someone like of that standard who could score 10 or 12 goals in the Premier League for you if he was playing regularly, which I think actually Origi is better than that, but he just doesn't get the opportunity. But yeah, they're the positions.
Will he be the marquee signing? I think Newcastle need a marquee signing to motivate the rest of the guys for the relegation.
There's talk of this fella from Lille, Sven Botman. He plays centre back for Holland. He's really, really good. He'd be an unbelievable signing. Now, most of the world wouldn't really know him that well, even though he plays for Holland. Yeah. But if we did sign Sven Botman, all we need to do then is bring Arjen Robben out of retirement, and we're elected because we'll have Botman and Robben. I've been saving that. But no, Sven Botman would be brilliant. There's also talk of the guy from Bayern Munich, Niklas Süle, plays centre back for Bayern Munich. His contract is running out, I think, at the end of the year. But I think I can't see it. You'd never know, like if they pay him enough, maybe. But they need someone. I do agree. They do need someone with a bit of profile. Someone like Niklas Süle would be well known around the world. He'd be a great signing for them. But Botman would be fabulous as well. There's talk of James Tarkowski from Burnley. He'd be a great signing for two reasons. One, he would improve Newcastle, and also it would cripple Burnley. I can't see Burnley letting him go unless Newcastle pay ridiculous money for him, because why would you? His contract is up in the summer. If you were in Burnley's position and you were being offered 10 or 15 million for him, you would rather hold on to him and try and stay up and let him leave for a free at the end of the year, rather than take 15 million now and go down. Hard to know, because every day with Newcastle, there's new players being linked to them. They're being linked with like Anthony Martial and players like that. I don't know if in the position they're in the table that Anthony Martial is a great idea.
There's a friend of mine who is a Newcastle fan, and apparently Dele Alli was linked, and his reaction to that was, if they sign Dele Alli, he's going to support Blythe Spartans instead.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with him.
Yeah,
they're not the kind of players. Yeah, they're not the kind of player, because Dele Alli would only be coming. If he was coming on loan, that would be different. If it was for months of a loan, that'd be a bit different, because he'd be motivated to play well.
Yeah.
But if you sign Dele Alli now on a 4-year contract, on the kind of money he's on at Spurs, now he wouldn't get the same money that he's on at Spurs, because he wouldn't deserve it right now. Say he's on 80 grand a week. There's every chance Dele Alli is another Jack Rodwell. Goes to Sunderland on 80 grand a week, gets it, won't leave. I mean, there's every chance. Now, I could be underselling Dele Alli. I'm not a Tottenham fan. I don't watch him all the time. But there's a reason why nobody seems to like him. He must be lazy. Like when Mourinho came in, I think he's along the lines of a kind of Gareth Bale type character. I think really good player, but the ecosystem around him needs to be perfect for him.
Yeah.
And I don't.
From what I've heard, he seems to have a high enough opinion of himself, and I don't know. I don't think he's what Newcastle kind of need for relegation battle right now.
No, I would agree with you there. I mean, fucking hell, like we don't need players. In the position we're in. Newcastle went down that road before. I remember the tail end of the Freddie Shepherd running of the club. We signed players like Mark Viduka, Alan Smith when he was on the way after leaving Man United. These guys had their chance at the top and had proved. Now, Alan Smith had a bad injury, to be fair to him. Alan Smith was a good player and tried really hard. I didn't like Alan Smith, but he did do well for Newcastle in the Championship. He did play for the jersey, in fairness. The legs were kind of gone, but his heart was there. His heart was in it, in fairness to him. I just didn't like him because I didn't like him when he was at Leeds and he played for Man United. That's why I didn't like him. But I didn't think he was a bad player.
Yeah.
But like Viduka, as soon as Newcastle were relegated, he was gone, like out of here,
mercenary, like.
I think he didn't want to play in the Championship, which was fair enough. But Joey Barton, for all the hassle he would have gotten, Joey played for Newcastle. He played for the shirt, in fairness to him, most days. Now, he did a lot of stupid things. I remember him getting sent off very stupidly at Anfield when the year Newcastle went down. It was stupid. He came on as a sub, got sent off straight away. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. 2009. But to be fair, when Newcastle went down, Harper, Nolan, Barton, Smith, Carroll, players like that, they rolled up their sleeves along with Chris Hughton and they've dragged us out of the championship. You know, I'll always remember those boys very fondly for that, even though, you know, their performances in the Premier League weren't always brilliant. But from the time Hughton came in, they stripped away a lot of the bad eggs out of the squad. Notably, Michael Owen was one of them. Oba Martins was one of them. Mark Verdugan. I know I'm going back over all ground, but my point is I'm using that as a datum point for future reference. And I know from experience that teams that go down are teams with bad eggs in them a lot of the time. When Gini Wijnaldum was at Newcastle, he was a bad egg. Brilliant player. He was brilliant in the home games, but away from home, he didn't try a leg. Just that, ask any Newcastle fan, they'll tell you Gini Wijnaldum didn't try a leg away from home. But
he's one player loved to back now, I won't lie. But
he brilliant for a good side, totally different context. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Brilliant player. Gini Wijnaldum scored 4 goals in a game for Newcastle. Not many fellas have done that. He was a brilliant player. But my point is, teams get relegated if the balance of fellas who sunshine boys versus hard workers, if that balance gets out of kilter, things can go bad. It happened to West Ham. It happened to Newcastle. It will happen to other teams. It can happen if you have too many guys like Dele Alli in a dressing room, and it's grand when things are going well. But if you start losing games, it can go sideways very fast. And that has happened to Newcastle before. So I would rather pay 30 million for James Tarkowski and know what I'm getting, and know I'm getting a good egg, a guy who will play for the jersey and who will put his head in where other fellas wouldn't. They are the guys that keep you up.
And you get the goals as well, hopefully, to get you over the line. So this brings us on to the final question. And it's the $1 million one. Can Newcastle stay in the Premier League this season? Are you expecting them to?
I think Newcastle will stay up.
Okay.
And here's why.
Brave.
Right. Here's my logic. Watford are 3 points ahead of Newcastle. Now they've 2 games in hand. Newcastle have 10 points. Norwich have 10. Burnley have 11. So they're all in the same boat, really. Now Burnley have a couple of games in hand as well.
Burnley have 3 games in hand in Newcastle, just to clarify that.
Yeah. Now Burnley's games in hand are against Man United, Leeds, Leicester, Arsenal, Man United. That's their next 5 league games.
Mm-hmm.
So then Liverpool, then Brighton, Palace, it gets a bit easy. But Burnley's upcoming fixtures are tough. Watford's upcoming fixtures, Tottenham, West Ham. Then they've got Newcastle away, Norwich at home. So the next 5 games or so, it's Watford I'm looking at. Leeds could get dragged into it, but I just think Leeds have goals in them. I've said this to you. This is the same logic applying to Newcastle that I'm applying to Leeds. I think Newcastle have goals in them, and I think Leeds have goals in them. Teams that have goals in them normally survive. It's normally the Burnleys, the Norwich teams who can't score that go down.
If you were to summarise the 3 teams to go down,
Norwich, Burnley, Watford.
Okay.
I just think that as long as Newcastle can keep Watford in their crosshairs, keep Watford within 3 to 4 points of them by the 10th, 15th of January, when Watford come up to St. James's on the 15th of January, I've no doubt Newcastle will win that game. No doubt. If Newcastle are within 3 points of Watford, when Watford come to town and Newcastle beat them, you're off to the races.
That game is on said out his day, right?
Yeah.
And I think what the league table, maybe not the following Sunday or the following Saturday, what the league table will tell on that day will tell an awful lot for Newcastle.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Assuming the game of Man United goes ahead on Monday night, 27th, Newcastle's next 5 fixtures are Man United at home, Everton away, Southampton away, Watford at home, with Cambridge and the FA Cup, we'll leave that out, and Leeds away. So by the 22nd of January, if Newcastle are still in the same position, it's going to be very difficult to claw back. That would be my opinion.
I would agree. I think if Newcastle are playing at home to Everton on the 8th of February, if Newcastle are out of the bottom 3 when that day comes, we'll be all right. Or even if we are 18th in the table, but we're only a point behind Watford, something like that, we'll be okay. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I personally will be rooting for you because next season we'll hopefully going over to Anfield together for Liverpool and Newcastle for another 4-3. So I really want Newcastle to stay in the league. If the worst does come to the worst, because in fairness, it's a tricky situation to be in. Like they could sign Messi and Ronaldo in January.
And they could still go down.
Yeah, that's what I
They
mean.
could sign, they could sign anybody and still go down. That could happen.
Do you know what it reminds me of? I know it's a very maybe bad example to get, but Hamilton and Verstappen,
Right.
they're
Okay.
in the final race when Hamilton didn't go into the pit stop, and he was kind of relying. I don't know what the other teams around Newcastle, that there was a huge gap between Hamilton and Verstappen, but because Hamilton didn't go into the pits, the gap was closing up second by second, lap by lap, until the safety car came.
Mm.
And my concern would be, will the gap be too big, which it looked like it would be until the safety car? Will the gap be too big for Newcastle to bridge from February to May at that point,
Right.
even if they have the advantage of the extra signings?
Yeah.
I think it could be a stretch too far to stay up. When you've won one game in half a season, you know, you need a lot of stuff to go right. What I would say is there's not a gaggle of teams. I think, as you said yesterday, I can't see Everton going down.
No, forget that. No Rafa Benitez team, not happening.
So the bottom three, it'll be one of Southampton, Leeds, or Watford to be included.
And I think Leeds are the least likely to be in the bottom three out of those three.
Yeah. And I think
Southampton could go sideways, but I can't see Leeds going down because they've got goals in them.
Yeah, so Watford, I think you could be right. If Newcastle are going to stay up, it'll be a Watford expense, I would say.
I agree.
And I would recommend, given the FA Cup, doing a clap on it and just writing off the FA Cup for you to.
I think I was saying that to you the other night, that one of the things that Newcastle fans always complained about was that Newcastle used to just sack off the cups, because under Mike Ashley, it was like, I mean, Benitez was pressured to play weaker teams in cup competitions. Now, I don't know if he said that publicly, but he definitely hinted at it. It's common enough that Newcastle's approach, even when I remember when Newcastle were in the UEFA Cup quarterfinals under Pardew, UEFA Cup semi-final, I think 1 year. Quarterfinal? Yeah, quarterfinal. Everything with Newcastle was, if we have a game on Wednesday, we dare not jeopardize getting 3 points on Saturday. And I never agreed with that, but I agree with it now. Like where Newcastle are now, that Cambridge game can fuck all the way off as far as I'm concerned. Put out the under-18s team against Cambridge and lose that game. Don't put out a reserve team and win it. Whatever you do, don't. That'd be a total disaster. Like I know losing to Cambridge will be, and TalkSport will get 3 days of talk out of it, and Paul Merson will have a ball at Newcastle's expense, and they'll all have a great time laughing at Newcastle. Fuck them. Like I don't care what they think. Like. Get beaten by Cambridge, or put out, fine, if you're going to put out your under-19s team and they beat Cambridge, and if you get Norwich at home in the next round, put out your under-19s team again. Do you know what I'm saying?
I would share your disdain for the Cups this season as well. I'd be very much in the Klopp mindset, but I think Newcastle will win a domestic cup in the next few years, definitely. I think that to break silverware duck, I think I can see it being a focus for future seasons, but not this one. Is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, just on the relegation battle. Like, I mean, the thing I would say is it does look like the points total is going to be like a record low this year. It was low last year. I remember last year sweating bullets. Newcastle were looking like they were only going to get 32 or 33 points, and I was saying that'll never do. Like, as it turned out last year, I think 30 points would have been enough. Yeah. So like, and it looks, if you double Newcastle's, like Newcastle have 18 games played, double that, 20 points. Norwich will be the same-ish. Burnley will be a little higher. 30 points will probably do you. 33 or 4 will definitely do you. So this thing of, a lot of people are looking at Newcastle's points total and Watford's points total. Like Norwich have the same amount of points as Newcastle. Burnley have only 1 point more. Watford have only 3 points more. People are looking at it and going, how are you going to get to 40 points? Like Newcastle have 20 games left. If they win 7 of them, they'll be fine. If they win 6 of them, they'll probably be fine. If they won 6 and drew 4, that'll get them to 32 points. They could lose half their games, win 6 and draw 4, and they'll probably be all right. Just about by the skin of their teeth. But they'll probably be. So it's the 40 points thing is kind of skewing people's thinking, I think. It's not 40 points anymore. It hasn't been 40 points in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, it's about 35 would do you. So Newcastle need to find 25 points in 20 games. That's doable. What I will say is we have had Watford away, which was winnable. We've had Brentford at home. We've had a lot of these games against teams that we should have been beaten around us that we haven't taken. We now can't afford to not beat Watford in 2 weeks' time. We can't afford to not beat Crystal Palace at home. We can't afford to. Our margin for error now is razor thin. That's the position we're in. It's by far from an impossible position. But what it is all you need is Callum Wilson to get a hamstring injury for 6 weeks, and you're in serious bother. That's where Newcastle are now. Is our margin for error is now gone. So is it doable? 100% doable. It's same. Burnley are in the same position. Watford are in a similar position. Norwich and even Southampton and Leeds aren't out of the woods. But if I was a Southampton fan right now and I have 17 points, I'd be looking at it going, we win 5 games, we're all right.
Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on it. We'll be providing analysis as the season goes on. Over the coming months as well, we're going to do an interview with Kieran, I suppose, on his management style and management experience.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah. I suppose you've potential candidate for Eddie Howe's job for you could be the Mancini figure.
Yeah, I was thinking of it. Maybe I could I don't know. Maybe I could make the tea or something like that. Would they pay me? Would they pay me to just kind of have an evening with Kieran Shanahan where I kind of go around the dugout and chatting to players and asking them how they're getting on and how the family and can I do anything for you and all this kind of thing.
On a serious note, I saw the profiles for the Kennedy Cup team from Newcastle West, and a good percentage of people said that you were the biggest influence in their career, and I'm sure they didn't just put that down for no reason.
Yeah, well, I paid them to say that.
Yeah, well, obviously you have made a big difference to a lot of these lads' careers. You know what I mean, and you've been a big influence on them, and you obviously brought out the best in them as well. So I'm looking forward to an interview with you on that as well. We'll do a separate interview on that. I suppose, Kieran, look, again, you're always a welcome guest by the fireside, and you're obviously bringing your own sense of humour to the table as well. And you're, as I said, I have had great feedback on people enjoying your analysis and your take on things in the football brain. So again, that was a great chat again today. I wish Newcastle every success. As I said, we want to get back over next season, and we don't want Liverpool Newcastle to be in an FA Cup game because I don't have criteria for tickets, number one, and yeah, so it needs to be Premier League match. So I hope you stay up. You've given the last word that you are going to stay up. You're confident and positive. I hope you're right. Is there anything you want to add there? Or?
No, nothing. Just thanks for having me on the usual. It's always good crack. It's always a good chat. Getting me to shut up is the trick. So you better finish it off.
No, it's great. Great chat as usual. I hope you have a great Christmas, and I hope that all my subscribers, all my listeners, even yours watching for the first time, have a very peaceful Christmas and a happy 2022. That Omicron stays away from you and your family. We get right back into it again in the new year. There'll be other episodes coming up. Very exciting guests lined up in the coming weeks, which I won't say or won't jinx, but there's some famous enough names potentially lined up in the coming weeks. So I hope you'll stick with us. Don't forget to smash that like button, smash the subscribe button, and smash the notifications bell so you won't miss any uploads as and when they happen. So thanks a million once again, Kieran, for joining us. Thank you for tuning in at home. I will see you next time on the Parlay with Podder podcast. Good night, God bless, and up the Toon Army.